Modern generations struggle to afford the average lifestyle largely because of the cost of essentials, like housing, healthcare, and education, has risen far faster than wages. Stable, long-term jobs with strong benefits have become less common, while gig work and contract positions leave many without financial security. At the same time, debt burdens, especially with student loans, take up income that previously generations typically used for savings and investing. All these shitty things put together lead to factors making achieving milestones like homeownership, family planning, and financial stability significantly harder than it was in past generations. In this video, we're going to further discuss all this bullshit. So despite which generation you find yourself falling into, or which tax bracket you sit in, don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments. I always love to read through those and respond to them once I see fit, as well as I want to give a huge shout out and a lot of acknowledgement to the handful of you guys checking out those links down below in the description. Those are always some of the best ways to support me and the content around here. Now, let's begin this shit show.
Buying a home feels impossible in 2024 or ever, because when you look at the prices of homes, you'll be like, why does this place cost $1.2 million? It's just a 3-bedroom, not updated house. It's on less than an acre. It's like, it's a whatever house. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, this house is probably like worth, I don't know, $300,000, $400,000. It's in a good neighborhood, it's got good schools, but like certainly not worth 1.2 million. And then as a millennial, you kind of gaslight yourself and you say, well, is that because I think about home prices in terms of what they were around the 2008 era when everything was basically cheap because of the housing crisis? Or do I think that way because I've been around whiskers, hey? But then no, you just scroll further down on Zillow, and when you click on the purchase history of the home, you see that the home sold for $347,000 in 2018, 2015, and now in 2024, they're asking $1.2 million. And you realize that people really are just getting away with it. They're selling a house that's worth $300,000, $400,000 for in the millions. And you realize it's not about how hard you work or how much you save, because you'll never buy a $1.2 million home that in your heart feels like it's a $300,000 home, because it is a $300,000 home. But you're not supposed to talk about how you feel, because then people who bought their home for 5 raspberries in 1970 and then sold it for $1.1 million will remind you that you're just whiny and ungrateful, and that if you just worked harder, you would be able to buy a home. And you're definitely not allowed to tell them that your generation is the most educated in history, that we work more hours than anyone else has, and that we are also paying for the children that you think we're not raising while surviving crisis after crisis. And then buying a home is just not the next thing that we do. Because even if I had the down payment and the mortgage to buy a 3-bedroom home that is $1.2 million, I wouldn't be able to bring myself to do it. Because if I'm going to pay $1 million for a house, I want it to feel like $1 million house. Starter homes historically were little 2-3-bedroom houses that needed some work. They were perfectly fine, but you could live there for a few years, save more for a better home as your family grew, and then move on. And starter homes like that are now in the 800s and 900s, and it's just not what it used to be. And I know that people say that in like a weird way, but it feels impossible.
Now, the overall concept of home ownership almost doesn't even really exist amongst modern generations like Gen Z or Millennials or people around my age, 25 to 35. And with all that being said, it kind of leaves this troubling situation for future generations, Gen Alpha, Gen Beta, or whoever. Really, but who cares about that? We only care about ourselves, especially here in the West, and especially if we're trying to, kind of incorporate some of the legacy that our past generations did, the old generations. We have to kind of take that selfish, greed and kind of fuck over the other generations so we can never get a tiny little bit of success here. Now, I don't think that's the case for every single. I don't think we can just make a blanket statement saying that every single old person, every single boomer in the elderly home is to blame for the current situation, the lackluster society that we find ourselves living in. But I definitely think that a lot of the people that did play factors in this to make the society the way it is were from these generations. So it's not that's not kind of a paint all picture, but it seems that like a lot of you guys in the comments do have a lot of resent towards your parents, being that you see the lifestyle they lived, and you don't see that being anywhere near, possible for yourself. And we're going to explain different reasons why that might be further along in today's video.
So I rent right now.
Yeah.
Paying just about $2,500 a month.
Yeah.
To rent an apartment, a 2-bed, 2-bath. It just doesn't
And I was like, for what? You know, I got a lot of friends in real estate. I know you do too. I don't know how you could buy in this market without having, like you said, a little bit of a nest egg that you already, or your family was able to help you out, or you started saving when you were doing your paper route when you were, you know, however old. I don't even know if kids do paper routes anymore. Getting that initial down payment and still trying to live a somewhat average life is difficult.
Now, you can feel free to share this wherever you personally grew up from, if wherever you were born into. Could you afford a home from that specific area? Or would you have to move out of that area to a different area, debatably, maybe depending farther away than you'd probably feel comfortable with, to afford any sort of comfortable lifestyle? Being that if you were born in like New York or LA, you're kind of screwed from the start. You're kind of fucked from the jump. You really don't have much of a good beginning in terms of your financial status unless you were born in a somewhat wealthy family. You have good connections to get yourself a somewhat secure, stable job, which almost is inevitably kind of this doesn't really exist. It's like inexistent. But in modern day, it seems as if you can get some sort of a steady backing and you're in a low-cost neighborhood. Still, there's all these different things creeping up around you, whether that's just the news headlines or, you know, any sort of milestones you see your peers hitting that you can never really seem to attain. Well, they're probably living in off of debt or credit or other, you know, means, borrowing from their future selves. They can't really pay off right now in the current moment. Potentially, the future selves will never be able to either. So, again, it's kind of leaving the modern generations, like Gen Z, mine, or Millennials, a lot of you guys in the comments, sitting kind of back, like, kind of like thinking to themselves, like, what is this really going on? Why does this feel so dystopian? It's kind of because it is.
You have to earn everything in life. Nothing comes for free. You can't get anything for free. You got to earn everything. Okay, ban inheritance. No, put a 100% inheritance tax in place, right? Because if you want to be morally consistent here, you know, no welfare, no free health care, no free food, no public housing, right? You want to play that game of you got to earn every penny? Okay, ban inheritance. Because they didn't earn that shit. I mean, that is unless you consider inheritance a genuine form of earning something, in which case you're delusional, because then we might as well be a fucking monarchy, right? You earned the power through being related to your dad. Does that sound reasonable to you? No, I didn't think so, right? So it is absurd to say that you have to earn everything, because first off, in life, no one earns everything. That's not how anything works. Everyone has certain benefits. And second of all, that's okay. And we might as well make those benefits a little bit more even, right? So honestly, if you want to be consistent here, ban inheritance.
Now, in this part of the video, we're going to talk about inheritance, something that I'll never really see myself, being that both my parents have already passed. You know, if you guys have been following along with my life, one of my parents have passed recently. And with all that being said, I will never have any sort of inheritance to my name. But I can kind of understand how if you were one of these people who do have parents who have some sort of home or some sort of any sort of, you know, belongings that can be, you know, thrown upon you after they pass, the odds of you selling that to get any sort of, you know, leverage in life is pretty high. Because I mean, if, like, what are you gonna, like, drag around your great grandma's hutch with a bunch of your, you know, fine china knickknacks in there? No, we have nowhere to store that type of shit. We're not gonna rent a storage unit for a couple $100 or $50, $100 a month for this. No, we're not gonna do that. We're just gonna sell it for a quick gain that will probably get blown on, you know, quick dopamine hits and maybe even, you know, lottery tickets to try to get ahead that will inevitably just steal from our, you know, soul and our faith and all that around. So it's weird, you know, you can't really kind of, you know, tell what's going to happen in the future, but you can tell one thing: it probably won't look very good. Well, that's going to wrap up this video discussing how home ownership seems damn near impossible in modern day for the modern generations, most specifically Gen Z, Millennials, people I can relate to, as well as even older generations creeping up upon their later years are kind of starting to find themselves not really being able to, you know, afford their lifestyle off of their social security checks and their pensions, which the majority of us will never even get to experience in our own right now. I definitely appreciate everybody who's been checking out the channel daily and have been showing your acknowledgement down below, whether that's just leaving your comments. I love to sort through those and respond to the ones I see fit, as well as a huge shout out to all of you guys checking out those links down below in the description. Those are always some of the best ways to support me in the content around here. Ever since my mother did pass slightly over a week ago, I've been kind of in this weird rut, this weird daze. I've been in this like pit of despair and kind of like bitterness, but I think that's kind of just the way I'm supposed to be in this stage. So we're going to keep on pushing along and continue marching on. So more appreciate you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's kind of all I got for this one. So I hope to see the next one. And yeah.